I became a born-again Christian. I said the prayer with my eyes closed, full of conviction, the whole bit. That was me. And I want to be clear about the kind of Christian I was, or the outward signs of the kind of Christian that I was. I prayed constantly, all day long. I studied the Bible on my own. I attended Bible studies. I led Bible studies. I tried to get people my age to have a thriving church community. I invited random people I'd just met, to church events that I had planned. I wrote in my journal to God. I meditated to listen to God. I participated in different kinds of prayer styles. I attended many different churches to visit, but I had a beloved home church that I attended regularly. I went to church Wednesday nights, Saturday nights, Sunday morning. I gave sermonettes at multiple retreats. I attended retreats. I sought God's will in everything, like even where to sit in a vehicle. I tried to listen for an answer. I prayed before meals, and I invited others to do the same. I talked with friends about the Bible and theology. I talked with non-Christian friends and tried to gently coax them to consider Christianity. I went to prayer meetings, and I generally spent most of my time thinking about spiritual things and trying to decipher my purpose in the whole scheme of things. My purpose, which people kept telling me I'd be able to figure out, and, various books promised that I'd find my purpose. I was the kind of Christian to whom you could mention an approximate passage like, oh, that part where Jesus is talking about vines. And I knew that that was in the book of John, chapter 15. I didn't know chapter and verse, but I knew book and chapter. Pretty good. Or you could mention something like, that was the story with the shepherds and the angels, and I knew that was the Gospel of Luke rather than the Gospel of Matthew, and it was really obvious it was in the beginning of the book, so I could find things really easily. I got a huge head rush out of learning about the natural world, and I was so excited about everything I learned, and it just made God seem so amazing, and I praised God for everything that I learned about. Importantly, my parents were always the type who thought that any conflict between religion and science was really ridiculous. And I'm very grateful for that because I was totally unafraid to learn about anything scientific. I owe them a lot for that. Oh, and I'm wearing a Christian shirt that I helped design and even helped vote on the verse to go on the back. That's, I didn't even have to look it up. It's Hebrews 3:13, and it's a reference to, don't stop meeting together, but, encourage each other while there is a time when you can call today. During this phase of my life, in my early 20s and my Christian fervor, I met the man that I later married, and we had a very religious marriage ceremony. We felt like God had called us to be together. We also eventually felt called to move to a very small town via my husband's job. We moved, and we were not prepared for the culture shock. He and I both grew up in suburbia, moderately affluent, educated. When we moved to a rural town, we saw fervent Christianity combined with paltry education, and the results were disastrous. Many people were judgmental while also being morbidly afraid, deathly afraid of hellfire at every turn. People who were different were ostracized, and it's not like we were in a city where there was a big group of outcasts with whom they could hang out. They were just out of luck. Just when you're ostracized, that's just it. Education was scorned because it often led people away from fundamentalist Christianity. Traveling evangelists would come to harass the kids into being afraid to study science. You can probably think of the various theories I'm thinking about. And in the absence of sex ed, the preteen pregnancy is rampant still. I just recently met a girl from this small town who was flabbergasted that she got pregnant because she and her boyfriend were both drinking a Mountain Dew every day, and they heard that that was supposed to be birth control. These kids were really let down, and so were the women that I visited in the prison weekly. They were held hostage by the culture in which they grew up, which was mostly based on fundamentalist, literalist, conservative Christianity. Religion, my religion, was perpetuating cycles of ignorance and poverty. It was disgusting. It was disheartening. It was the most infuriating, sad thing I'd ever seen, and it was my religion. I felt so alone. I felt in the closet just from having moderate Christian beliefs, like beliefs that women can have leadership roles in the church, and I mean, let alone having liberal beliefs. My husband and I really wanted to help the kids of the community see outside of their mental cages, so we looked around for work with youth with churches. He became a volunteer, and I was actually hired by a church as the youth director for the church. I was totally dedicated to my church job. I studied even more. I listened to the Bible during the day, and I dreamed up events and activities and outreach and things like that. But the more I studied Christianity, the Bible, fundamentalism and the nature of it, religion, the more I came to realize that there were some glaring problems, like with the doctrines. Doctrines, it seemed like they were drafted more to be exclusive than instructive. I found that even I didn't agree with all of the doctrines. And where did that leave me? The fewer doctrines I took for granted, the more personal my religious journey became. This is the stage at which a lot of moderate Christians find equilibrium. It's quite possible that I wouldn't have continued to keep letting go of one doctrine after another. Maybe I would have found a kind of stasis, a balance. I might have just become a more moderate, more liberal, more kind of mystical, Buddhist-like Christian. That's sort of where I was headed, and that's where I stayed for a while. Or perhaps the fact that I kept challenging myself and reevaluating is an indication that I never could have maintained equilibrium in any religion. I don't know. I will never know. But the fact of the matter is, I kept learning, and I kept thinking, and eventually I discovered that I couldn't hold on to most of what Christianity had become since the time of Christ.